Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. I rise today to inform the House of a breach of Standing Order 39. It is in regards to what is now popularly known as the carbon tax cover-up, and it may rise as such
Order, order, order. My Lord, my Lord, my Lord. Order. I just remind colleagues that the member is allowed to present his point of order, and I would encourage the member to remember that this is not debate and to carry on with his point of order.
And I ask members of the House not to shoot the messenger, Mr. Speaker. That's just what people are saying. Mr. Speaker, this matter might, though, it is a serious matter. Under the standing order referenced earlier on, members have the right to submit questions to the government and receive responses to those factual questions. Beyond a potential breach of that standing order, this is a matter that may rise to the seriousness of contempt. This chamber, of course, is the child of the mother parliament in Britain, wherein the Joint Committee on Parliamentary Privilege attempted to provide a list of types of contempt, which included, and I quote, deliberately altering, suppressing, concealing, or destroying a paper required to be produced for the House of Commons, end quote. My point of order refers to the suppressing/concealing of said information. The evidence for the possibility of this breach is in comparing an order paper question and the non-response to it with subsequent documents that were released under access to information. The original order paper question asked for, quote, analysis conducted in 2015-16 by the government with regard to the impact on family household budgets of the carbon tax. The government refused to release any documents in that regard, suggesting that none existed. Now, at the time, acting in good faith, I refused to ascribe to malice that which might only have been explained by incompetence. It would be incompetent not to have done such an analysis before imposing such a tax, but I took the government at its word. Subsequent ATIP, a subsequent access to information revealed that, in fact, they do have documentation that says, quote, imposing a price on carbon emissions, either through a cap-and-trade or tax system, would raise the cost of fossil fuels and energy. These costs would then cascade through the economy in the form of higher prices. Those prices then are laid out in a table which is whited out. As a result, we do not know what's in it, but we do know that it exists, and therefore we know that the government was breaching its duty to share that information with respect to the original order paper questions. Then I asked the government what impact the new carbon tax would have on the price of the market basket measure. That's a measure by Employment and Social Development Canada, which determines the full cost that a family must absorb in order to buy basic goods and services required to live as a functional part of a society. Again, the government claimed not to have any data on that whatsoever. However, the ATIP in which I subsequently came into possession says, and I quote, imposing a price on carbon emissions either through a carbon tax or a cap-and-trade system does lead to higher prices, and it goes on, and it makes reference to a second table which would answer the question. So that table also exists. Finally, I asked, Mr. Speaker, for the government for any impacts to the change in food prices for a family of four. Again, the ATIP makes implicit reference to changes in the costs of food to nourish a family, but, of course, Mr. Speaker, that too is blacked out. I can go on and on. In fact, I will be submitting to you, I think the government would like me to, but in the instance of brevity, I will give you a systematic list of all of the documentation to which the government admits it is in possession, but which it deprived me of receiving when I submitted my original order paper question. Now, the Prime Minister is attempting to portray himself as a cornucopia spraying riches far and wide. But he did not produce those riches, Mr. Speaker. He takes them from those who did, and by depriving those people of the information on the original costs, he deprives them.
The member is now straying into debate. I'd like him to stay to his point of order and conclude.
Mr. Speaker, allow me to conclude by simply referring back to the parliamentary tradition from which we take everything we have here in this august chamber. And of course, that tradition comes from the mother parliament in Great Britain, where in the 17th century the adoption of the Bill of Rights gave every subject and now citizen the principle of no taxation without representation. That is, that the public must not be forced to bear the burden of any cost without its consent, but you cannot cost to something when you cannot consent to something when you do not know what it is. Therefore, there can be no taxation without information. And so I ask the government to do the honourable thing and release that information immediately. Now, if the government refuses to do so, you as president of this chamber have the obligation to compel them to do so, and I ask in the interest of taxpayers and in the interest of the common people which we are gathered here to represent that you do just that. Thank you.
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Government House Leader is rising on the same point of order.
On the same point of order.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Yes, Mr. Speaker, my comments will be brief. I will limit my response to what has already been stated many times in the House on this issue. As you know, the Speaker does not judge the content or quality of answers provided in the House of Commons. The Chair has ruled consistently in this regard, Mr. Speaker. Think in terms of Speaker Jean Sauvé in her February 28, 1983 ruling stated that it is not the Chair's responsibility, and I quote, to determine whether or not the contents of documents tabled in the House are accurate. Speaker Milliken's ruling of December 12, 2012 stated that, quote, the Speaker has no role in reviewing the content of responses to written questions. In fact, Mr. Speaker, your ruling of September 27, 2017, concerning the government's response to Order Paper Question 152, again supports this position. And I should have said 2016, Mr. Speaker. Furthermore, House of Commons Procedure and Practice, second edition, on page 522 states that, quote, there are no provisions in the rules for the Speaker to review government responses to questions. Mr. Speaker, I submit that the matter before us has been dealt with on numerous occasions in the past, and I have no further comments at this point.